The following video contains material that some people may find distressing. If you find yourself in need of assistance, visit beyondblue.org.au or call the Beyond Blue support service on 1300 22 4636 or Lifeline on 131114. I don't think I need to introduce you because you're James Hird, but hey, this is very unique because back in the olden days,
yes,
Essendon superstar, and I used to play with the Mighty Hawks.
Yep.
So
from an
AFL background, we were arch rivals.
We were.
So it's a bit weird now that I'm sitting down having a bit of a chat with you.
It is, but we've done a lot of things together since we retired, and since you've grabbed my throat and held me up against the fence and threatened to kill me out on the ground, we've become good friends. So I'm looking forward to it.
Now, I'm an AA Vitality Ambassador and have been for a long time. And the great thing about the program, it allows the ambassadors to do what they believe in. And mine was pretty much sitting down and having a great chat with you and talking about not only the highs, but also the lows and wherever that may go. So I really appreciate you doing that. Firstly, why did you let me sit down and have a chat with you?
Oh, I think, Crawford, we've known each other for a long time, and I think you've got great perspective on something like my life. So it'll be an interesting story to tell to you. But you know, obviously, and I do have a lot of respect for you, and I know we'll go to some places that are pretty raw. But no, I'm looking forward to just having an honest conversation with you. As you said, some highs, but also some lows that have been well documented and coming out the other side.
And I must admit, I don't like talking about the lows. I always like to have fun and have a good laugh, and I like seeing people laugh, and I like to laugh myself. But I suppose the best way to attack it is just sort of go through your life. Are you happy with that?
Do we start when I was born, or is that too far back?
Well, maybe not there,
Okay.
but you grew up in Canberra, yeah?
Yes, I grew up in Canberra, spent most of my childhood, all my childhood there before I was drafted in 1990 to come to Essendon. Turned up at Essendon early 1991 and the football career started then.
Took off from there. So what about your childhood? Was it always your dream to play AFL football?
Absolutely. I mean, Essendon was in the family. My grandfather had played for Essendon, my father had played for Essendon, and it felt like the family business a little bit, you know. Obviously, you don't think it's going to happen. You dream about it. You get out, you kick the footy. But, you know, my heroes and idols in life were Essendon footballers, Tim Watson, Terry Danaher, Simon Madden. And it was something I'd always, you know, really wanted to do. And it seems quite a narrow dream now when you look at the big picture of the world. But yeah, as a child, I just couldn't imagine anything more I wanted than playing for the Essendon Football Club.
Were you any good as a young kid at football?
I was okay. I was okay, and Are you
being modest, or
no? You go through spurts in your development as a person, I suppose, and it happens when you get older as well. But as a child, you know, sometimes you grow, sometimes you don't grow.
I didn't grow.
Sometimes you don't grow at all. But some years I was good, some years I wasn't. But certainly on the cusp of getting drafted and having the family name and my grandfather and father being before me probably helped. But as in your career, hard work and dedication can take you a long way.
Were you like that as a teenager? Like, did you have that hard work ethic? And were you okay football-wise? Did you actually improve a lot during those teenage years?
I loved playing football. Like, I didn't like the training, the weights, the that sort of stuff, the running. But when the football was in front of me, I absolutely loved it. So I'd say I was a hard worker with the football in front of me, and I loved football. And used to thrive on just being on my own and kicking the ball in the backyard or going to the park and kicking the ball and then with your teammates and your mates. But it really took me my first couple of years at Essendon to work out how to train. You know, you needed to learn how to train and that really gut-busting running, the early mornings, all the weights, all the extra work, that took a while to learn. I don't think it's intrinsic in many young kids, but I was lucky to have some great role models at Essendon who taught me how to train. And from about the age of 2021, when I learned how to really train, that's when I suppose I saw my football get better and better.
So when you were drafted, what pick were you?
Pick 79.
Which is a very late pick.
Yeah.
But a dream come true, being put on a list.
Oh, it was incredible. I mean, I remember there was no draft on TV back in 1990 or end of 1990. It was my dad said I could stay home from school. And I was sitting at home by the phone at 9:30. The phone rang, and Dad said, "Oh, you've been drafted. Now get to school." So I hung up the phone and went to school. And it's not like in Melbourne, where everyone knows about the draft. In Canberra, no one knows. So I was walking around looking for someone to tell. Oh, guess what?
So who did you tell?
Drafted. Well, no one, because no one cared. I mean, really, it was a bit like that. But no, it was a dream come true. And to come to Melbourne and play at Essendon was, as I said, it was an incredible experience as a young kid, and taught me a lot about life and myself.
And so, what about the Essendon days? Like, because early in your career, you had a bit of success, didn't you? Because you had the Baby Bombers, which was a great young team, and a lot of kids your age coming through and winning the ultimate. Yeah,
I was very lucky that we had a coach in Kevin Sheedy, and the Essendon had lost the 1990 grand final to Collingwood. And with partway through the 91 year, which was my first year, Sheeds decided he needed to rebuild the team. So he kept sort of 10 or 12 of the old guys. And then he cycled a lot of young players, Mercury, Wanganeen, Alessio, Calthorpe, Olorenshaw, myself, Dustin Fletcher, came into the team as a group. So there's 9 or 10 of us who were training and playing together. And like all young kids, 18, 19-year-old, we'd be playing and going out. And it was a wonderful time in our lives. And we were fortunate enough to win the 93 premiership, make the finals most other years, and then win another premiership in 2000. So for probably the first 10 years of my career, we were either in grand finals, in preliminary finals, or thereabouts, and that was where you wanted to be. So as a young kid growing up, not only was I achieving my dream of playing at Essendon, but I was playing in one of the best teams in the competition for a regular time, which was very exciting and probably the best time in my career.
I think that's why I didn't like you, because we weren't having success, and I was watching the finals all the time, and Essendon were always there.
So you didn't like me. So you're being honest now.
No, I was always jealous of the football club, the Essendon Football Club, because every year you were just so successful, and I craved that. Our team craved that. So, so you're very lucky to be in that situation. So everything goes beautifully from team success and individual success. All Australians, you win best and fairest. You become the golden boy, So how did that sit with you?
Yeah, it's evolved. Like, I mean, it was interesting when we first started. Gavin Wanganeen was the golden boy at Essendon. I don't know if 93 won the Brownlow, won the premiership, and really was the favourite of the fans. But in 96, he went to Port Adelaide, started and he left. So there's a bit of a void there. So I definitely, I suppose, your star was rising, and you got a lot more attention and we had, as I said, a very successful team. And, everything went right. I mean, I just finished an engineering degree, met my wife, got married. We're winning premierships. We're playing in finals. I'm playing well. So it was a pretty much a life that was blessed. But underneath all that was a lot of hard work. There's a hell of a lot of hard work, as you would know. I mean, you Brownlow, premiership player. Everyone would look at Shane Crawford's life as well and go, wow, amazing. But the amount of hard work that you had to put in to get there. And my view always was that if you're working as hard as everyone else, well, you'd always be like everyone else. So I always wanted to work harder, do more, try more things, work as hard as you possibly could. And I think that was inbuilt by my parents, but also definitely has stood me in good stead for the rest of my life, in that if you want to be somewhere, be something, you've got to work, even harder than everybody else.
You were given the captaincy, so that's great responsibility. Yeah,
and I struggled with that early on. Like, I think I was probably 24 or 25 when I got the captaincy in 1998. And very difficult for a young person to tell older players or lead older players who you'd looked up to your whole life. I mean, Gary O'Donnell, Darren Buick, just to name a few, Peter Somerville, who were players at the club who were a lot older than I was, and you're leading them and you doubt yourself. And I think one of my first year as captain, I remember just thinking, I was terrible, because I just wasn't. I was, leading by counsel, really asking everyone's opinion and not really having my own opinion. And I think after a year or two of that, you decide, okay, if I'm going to be the captain, then I'm going to do it my way. And yes, listen to other people, but this is the way I'm going to do it. And another good lesson in life, that you have to have strong beliefs and strong and a strong direction, and take all the information in. But after you've taken information, put your own imprimatur on the place, and definitely after that became a much better captain, a much stronger captain through that time.
You also had a lot of hiccups though along the way. So you had injuries that were virtually career-threatening.
Yeah.
So it wasn't all, it wasn't all sort of bells and whistles. It was a real challenge there for you, because I remember I remember back in the time, it was very much talked about. James Hird might not play ever again because you had foot injuries and stress fractures and lots of things where the technology wasn't right to actually help you get through.
Yeah, it was my navicular in my foot, which is one of the major bones in your foot, had a stress fracture in it in 1997. And 97, 98, 99, I think I played a combination of 20 games for that whole 3-year period. At the end of, start of 99, when I broke it again, the doctors basically said, well, we'll give it one more go on the operation, but if this doesn't work, then we think you shouldn't play again because the bone can't just cop any more screws going through it, any more operations going through it. So that was a very challenging time. And, like yourself, blew my knee out, broken bones, broken skull, lots of different injuries. And people do see the glossy side of it. But what I really loved about football and at the end of your career is the amount of hard work and disappointment you had to go through to get that ultimate achievement. I mean, you played in a premiership, I played in a couple, and that's the ultimate. That's really what you remember. But for 17 years of my career, and I think yours is maybe a year or two longer, 18 or 19, you have one or two of these great moments and more down moments than up. So footy teaches you to actually get up off the ground and go again. And one of the things I always try to, after an injury, to believe in was that, all right, I'm going to make myself a better player than I was before I got injured. And that was a challenge. And, most of the time I was able to do that, but that was a challenge that you set yourself in the game.
What about coming to the end? When you know it's the end of your career, it's hard to work through, even though you have other things that you're looking forward to, and you had great balance with your life because you had lots of work going on away from football, but it's still a big part of you that you're just shutting down and finishing.
It's huge. And I had a really good business. I started with my business partners and a great business that was, global, and I was working at it part-time while coming towards the end of football, and I thought I'd transitioned out of football and into this business really well, and I wasn't going to miss it. You're training hard, you're not going to miss the injuries, you're not going to miss it. But I remember sitting on my kitchen floor and just, everyone's gone to bed, my wife's upstairs, kids are in bed, and just sitting there and just crying on the ground. 3 or 4 months after I retired, a year after I retired, not because I was depressed or was anything wrong. It's just you're grieving this life that you had, and it was just a way of letting it out. And I think that everyone who puts so much time into something like we did into our profession, when it's gone, you not only miss your mates, you miss the training, you miss the structure, but you miss a bit of purpose too, because that was our purpose for so long, rightly or wrongly. We were conditioned for that, our purpose. So, yeah, it was retiring. As much as I was glad to retire because I'm sick of being sore and sick of the coach yelling at me all the time and that sort of stuff. There was a grieving process that had to be gone through.
But you also have to be selfish, don't you? So as an AFL footballer, everyone else's life revolves around you. So it teaches you to be selfish, and it's very much, it's like you're brainwashed. Once you're in, there's nothing else going on in the world.
No, and you do realise how selfish you become at the end of it. You don't realise when you're in it, but everyone has to eat at the same time you're eating. That everyone has to go to bed. It's sort of I suppose the rewards out of footy are great, financial, and there's great experiences, but you do feel for the wives and partners and your own partners, your own kids, because it is such a structured existence. And it's all about you. I mean, there's no doubt that any footballer who's successful will sit back and go, well, it was all about me and my performance, and not many other people came into your realm of your brain. So there's a bit of that to adapt to when you're not playing, that you have to sort of start to try and become less selfish. Some of us have done it better than others, but there's still that element of selfishness in you, I think, because that's how you're programmed to perform.
You just know that you've got to try and get the very best out of yourself, and that's the little cocoon that you need to be in.
Well, I mean, you couldn't turn up to your coach and say, well, I can't train for the next couple of days because this happened or that happened. That just wasn't acceptable. So you sort of structured your whole life around you, and in the end that does lead to a little bit of selfish behaviour.
So you've just finished an incredible career, and life for James Hird's going well. So you're business-wise, you're doing well. You're commentating on football when you feel like it, and everything's probably a bit more balanced. And then you decide, oh, hang on, there's an opportunity to get back into coaching.
Yeah, which ultimately wasn't the best decision, and history would say it was a poor decision. But you I really missed football at the time, and it was a time when Essendon had gone through 4 or 5 years of, well, I don't think we'd made the finals for 7 or 8 years, which is unusual for us. And I got the call from the president of the club at the time that'd like me to come and sit down and talk about coaching. And it was a really tough decision for a number of reasons, because my business partners and I had set up a really good business, and it was leaving them in the lurch a little bit. I knew it was going to be challenging on our family, just because coaching is tough. So, Tanya's support in all that was huge. And, she really left that decision to me. But it was a decision I made because I wanted to do something for the football club and get it back to the position that I thought it should be. And naively thought that, you could jump straight out of playing into coaching, which I think in hindsight was a mistake. But, I was very passionate about it. It was stressful. Like even before all the stuff we'll talk about with the ASADA side of things, the job is I don't think it's the hardest job in the world, but the media scrutiny and the pressure you put on yourself to perform, I think it makes it one of the more stressful jobs that I can imagine.
It's hard. Not that I've coached before, but it's. I could see, and I saw a lot of coaches sacked during my time.
How many coaches you have?
I had 5, and the thing is, they're all very good people. They're very passionate about footy, but even when we were winning, they were under enormous pressure, and that's the situation as a coach, isn't it?
Yeah, as a player, you play the game, you win. You've probably got 48 hours to enjoy that win before you get back to training, and you're into it. And even early in the week at training, you're enjoying it. So maybe you don't refocus your brain on going after that next game to maybe Wednesday or Thursday. But as a coach, if you play on a Saturday, you might get a few hours till game finishes at 6. You might get till 9 or 10, but just you can enjoy the win. But after that, you got to watch the highlight. You got to watch the game back. Then you got to do your edits. Then you got to talk to press. Then you got to whatever. So you're out of stress for maybe 2 or 3 hours if you win, and then you're straight back into it in a highly stressed area. And if you lose, well, there's just you're not out of stress at all. It's continually, it rolls on and rolls on. So I would think that perhaps the really experienced coaches have learned to manage their expectations and also their temperament and their feelings a little bit, and can go through that roller coaster a bit more. But as a young coach, you're up here straight away. And the really difficult job, I thought, was just trying to connect with every player as much as you needed to. Like Shane Crawford, best player at Hawthorn. Yes, he and I would, if he's a coach of Hawthorn, would connect and you'd be able to talk to Shane. But player 42 that, has played in the reserves and you haven't seen him for a week, and how do you connect with him? Is a very difficult task. And that to me was quite stressful, not being able to touch and feel your players all the time in a way that they felt like you cared for them and you were trying to help them.
So you have 4 or 5 years out of the game, but you're still watching a lot of footy because you're working for Foxtel as well.
Yeah.
So you're still very much connected with it. You take over Essendon. So how does that feel when you're in charge of a football club, being a champion player? Now I'm the coach. I've got to get these boys going. So how does that actually make you feel inside?
Oh, it makes you feel very proud, but also the days you turn up and go, what am I meant to do? As a player, you look at the coach and I love Kevin Sheedy. I thought he was the most amazing coach and great mentor. But often you'd be critical about it. Well, why are we doing that? Well, what's that about? So you're critical, inside. And then when you are the coach, you have so much more respect for them. So it's pride, but there's also a lot of, you're learning on the job and you don't really know what to do. I was very lucky in that, Brendan McCartney, been senior coach, assistant coach for a long time. Bomber Thompson, who coached Geelong. Simon Goodwin, terrific coach. Sean Wellman, terrific coach. So I had a really good group of coaches around me in my first year. So that made it easier. But sometimes you'd be standing there watching training and just going, what am I meant to be actually doing? What am I meant to be watching for? And then you get into the game situation where you're coaching in the game and you find yourself starting to get into the emotional side of the game. You're starting to barrack a bit and you've got to pull yourself back and just be analytical about the game. So there's a lot more to the coaching than it looks. But for me to be the coach of Essendon at the time, I was very proud to have that position. Yeah.
So it's all going well. You're in charge of Essendon, and then all of a sudden, bang, you hit a brick wall. So what happened?
Yeah. So look, we got told by the AFL that we were going to be investigated by ASADA, pretty much. I mean, there's a long story to it. We could do hours and hours on that. But the whole ASADA Essendon investigation was a terrible time for the players particularly, the supporters at Essendon, supporters of the game, and everyone involved. So basically, Essendon was accused of giving its players performance-enhancing drugs. And it really went from a really great coaching environment with good people to just a day-to-day crisis management where you are literally dealing with crisis day in, day out and trying to run your normal job. So it was the 4th of February 2013. It's my 40th birthday. I woke up in the morning, went for a run, and literally had the thought when I'm going around for my run, this has just been, I've had a great life. I've played for the club I wanted to play at, been successful, got a job I want to have, married to the most perfect woman in the world, 4 kids. Life doesn't get much better. And that was at maybe 7 o'clock in the morning. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon that day, I'd been called into the president had come into my office and basically said, the AFL thinks we're guilty of giving the players performance-enhancing drugs. What do you think? And I'm like, what do you mean what I think? We definitely haven't been doing it. I know nothing about it. I don't know what you're talking about. And then it just snowballed from there. There was government investigations. The sports minister made an announcement. It was the darkest day someone said darkest day in Australian sport. And we set off a train of events that basically ended up with the players being suspended or found not guilty initially, being suspended for a year in 2016. And literally, was by far and away the worst time in my life. By far and away the worst time, more importantly, in 34 players' lives and a lot of good people around football.
So how do you go about coping in that situation? Because obviously you've been the captain and you've been in lots of situations. You've dealt with the career-threatening injuries. But then how do you go, because you would go into bat for your players and you fight, for their well-being and obviously for their innocence. So how do you prepare yourself to go into battle for stuff like that?
Yeah, well, not very well. I mean, I don't think anyone could be prepared to go through the sort of crisis that we went through. Not only was it a slight, and obviously I thought players were being accused of doing something they hadn't done, which, if you're in elite sport, the two things you don't want to be accused of are throwing a game through gambling and also, through drugs. I think they're the two that you really say, well, you just want to have nothing to do with those two areas. And one of them we were being accused of. And so I went into bat for my players day in, day out and said that there's no way that they would have done this. And I think from the day it happened, the one thing that I wanted to try and do was get the players cleared and make sure that they were free and the club could go and play. And tried to do that to the best of my ability and in a very naive, inexperienced way. And a lot of the times you'd come out and you'd be quite defensive and quite aggressive towards media or people who are criticising what you're doing, and also take on the enemy. And you legitimately thought that the accusers and probably the AFL were the enemy at the time because they seemed to be trying to get us in trouble where I didn't think there was a problem. This is in hindsight and naively. And so if you look at the 4 or 5 pillars of what you had to deal with, you're trying to defend the players, you're trying to find out what happened. Like, still, no one really knows what went on, which I think is the biggest mistake. Thirdly, you're trying to put on a face in the media that you've got control when you had absolutely no control. Fourthly, you're trying to coach the club. You're trying to make sure that we're winning games of football, which, scarily enough, 2013, we had a hugely successful season. I think we finished 5th on the ladder before the finals, got kicked out of the finals, but finished 5th and had a really successful team. But then the 5th one, which is the most important, is you've got your own family, right, at home, who you're trying to work through with your own family and trying to balance that between here's your profession, just, going down the toilet and people you care for, going through a lot, and here's my own family. My kids went to school and one of my kids got abused at the supermarket, the kids are getting abused at school, your dad's a drug addict, your dad's this, your wife's walking down the street and people walking the other way. So you're putting on a face as you go out to work, and then at home, it's a very difficult situation. And I had an amazing support from Tanya, and she was very, very supportive, but still, you could see the family just sort of being put under a huge amount of pressure, to the point that every morning there'd be TV cameras from, everywhere out the front of the house. And a good day you'd have, 10, a bad day you'd have 50 out the front. Came to a point midway through the year where we had a glass window. The kids would stand at the glass window and they'd basically say to me, Dad, you're going to have a good day today, you're going to have a bad day. And a bad day was you'd have OB vans lined up, or a good day there'd only be 5 or 6 cameramen out the front. And so the kids would know from the cameras. And, you're having a shower, and I could see out in the street while you're having a shower how many cameramen are out there, and you're having a shower, and you're just preparing yourself to go out into almost some sort of battle and some sort of defence of your club and yourself. And, accusations that were levelled on us, accusations on myself that the special ops team had raided our house for drugs, just crap that was not true. So you have to defend that. Also have to also have to try and find out what the truth is, why you're trying to care for your players and also your family. So it was a lot of stress, and in the end, a couple of years later, really bit me on the backside. But I thought in that first 8 or 9 month period, I was handling the stress pretty well. But I think in the end, it brings you down. So
you would virtually roll out of bed, jump in the shower, and you could look out through the screens, and that's how you'd start your day.
Pretty much look out, yep. And you'd stop exercising, right? Because I couldn't go for a run, couldn't get outside, you couldn't do that. So you look out the window and, yep, all right, there's 10 of them. You'd log on to the Herald Sun website, the Age website, see what was written, because then you could work out what the questions were going to be and what you have to respond to. And every day it was something, vastly different. But it was it was a time that it's even hard to explain the amount of pressure, both outside the home and inside the home, because it's not necessarily about what other people pressure on you, but here I am, a proud Essendon person. I've brought this upon my club. That's my thought. I've got to fix it. Proud father, proud husband. I've brought this upon my family. I've got to fix it, and that became very difficult to deal with.
And you got 4 kids.
Yeah, 4 amazing kids.
Yeah, so obviously the stress on them as well, which as a father you don't want that.
No, and Stephanie, the eldest, she was, what was she been at the time? Maybe 14, 15, maybe 16, going into year 10, I think at the time. So pretty, or maybe year 9. So pretty, girls are pretty. Everyone knows what's going on. My son's in year 7, playing footy. Boys at his school were pretty.
You were helping coaching as well.
Yeah, I was trying to coach that team as well. So they were right in the middle of it. And as I said, the boys got in a few punches thrown at supermarkets, and a lot of abuse, and I really felt for my wife, because she was trying to hold the family together, and she's a very proud person and also very defensive of me, obviously, because she sort of saw me going through a lot. So it became almost unbearable. But every day you wake up and you go, all right, I've got to deal with this, I've got to work through it, and one day this will finish. And fortunately it did.
And she would have been seeing cracks appear too in you, whereas you're trying to put on this strong facade and protect not only the family but obviously the players.
Absolutely, and massive cracks, I imagine. The amount of times, like I remember before the Fremantle game, it was about round 4 or 5. We're going over to Perth to play Fremantle on Thursday night. It was Easter weekend. Yeah, it was Easter weekend. We're going to play Perth on the Thursday, Fremantle on the Thursday, and on the Wednesday I basically got sacked. Basically the club president rang up and said, "Oh, you better go off the track because there's no, you're sacked." So you get home, walk off the track, grab your bag, go out. You go home, and Tony said, "What are you home so early?" "I think I've been sacked." You haven't been sacked, and you have been sacked, and then you discuss that, and then they decide you're not sacked, so you fly over to Perth. And when we're in Perth, there would have been, the media around that Perth game was just, I've never seen anything like it in my life. OB vans across the whole of, around Perth, people following us everywhere, literally hundreds of media following us around everywhere. And ring your wife from the hotel room, I don't know what's going on, I don't know why the media are here, have I been sacked, haven't I been sacked? And that game against Fremantle, I think we were like 6 goals down somewhere through the third quarter, and got up to win by 3 or 4 points right at the death.
I can still see the image of Essendon players and yourself, the way you sang that song, the passion and the connection that the group had?
Yeah, because my view, and I think everyone's view, if we had lost that game, I was sacked, right? And so the emotion of up and down and up and down, and then then you start drinking a bit too much. Not that you're not drunk, but every night you might have a bottle of wine. Just you do things that to cope with stress and pressure that you never thought you would do. And I think that is an interesting insight for me, is that when everything's going well in people's lives, it's really easy to be really calm and collected and do the right thing and go and exercise and and eat well and have a healthy lifestyle and be nice to people and all that sort of stuff. But when stress and things change and you go through difficulties, you can see why people start to drink a bit more. They don't exercise. They don't eat right. They're a bit snappy. They might have fights with their partner. They might not be as respectful as they need to be to other people. And that's that. Looking back on that time, and that's why, I love living a healthy lifestyle. I love being healthy, and I am very healthy now. But it's not as easy when there's other stresses in your life, and I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind.
When all the craziness was happening, you used to ride your bike to training, which would take you an hour.
Yep.
But that was a way for you just to clear your head, set yourself for the boys at training, and get yourself into a good headspace.
Yeah, so when it was really crazy in 2013, I couldn't even ride my bike, because if I'd come out of there, I was getting followed by a motorbike for probably 2 months everywhere I went, or the media. So I couldn't even ride my bike. When that finished, I came back, had a year off and came back to coach. I'd ride, all the way to Tullamarine, which was 30 Ks, 35 Ks, and ride back. And that was fantastic time. The endorphins of riding, the headspace being clear, and I found that exercise for me was probably the one thing that really enabled me to balance my life, and just hard exercise, because it just made you actually forget the hardness of the exercise, made you forget, because there was no other way to stop your brain just going round and round and round and over-analysing and over-assessing and overthinking everything that had gone on.
So when you look back to Essendon, do you go, okay, I was too trusting of people in certain positions? You had a sports scientist, and I was too trusting. I let him do his job because that's his profession, and you've got to back someone in who knows what they're doing. Yeah. Is that what you look back on?
Yeah, and I think that's probably being too kind. I think yes, I was very trusting. I thought these are the experts and too trusting, but I also the criticism of my personality is I'm not enough in the detail, or wasn't then, and really would trust people to do their job. But being reasonable about it, I should have been a lot more over that side of things. Yes, it wasn't my responsibility. You have the medical staff, you let them do their thing. But I probably should have. I should have known what was going on earlier and should have put a stop to what was going on earlier. And I'm very, very disappointed that I didn't, because if I had have, perhaps what happened wouldn't have happened. But you learn, right? You learn that that's a part of your personality I need to be better at, and you try to be better at it since. I wish that hadn't have happened, because a lot of particularly 34 players and their families got terribly hurt through it all.
And your family as well.
Oh, yeah. I suppose my family. Yeah, my family's probably been hurt as much as anyone's family, if not, I don't know, more or less, as much as anyone's family in a number of different ways. But I think we can talk about our family within our family, but I suppose outside of that, the players, I just feel for players who totally innocent have had their career taken away, 3 or 4 years of their career. Their mothers, their fathers, sisters who had to walk around town and have their son get called a drug cheat through no fault of their own.
Now, at Essendon, when you were coaching, you had a lot of senior staff move when everything was just going crazy. And then I remember you telling me one day that Mark Thompson, who was an assistant coach, and yourself, at the end of every training session and after all the media had hounded you, you'd virtually go into a room and you'd console each other, and you had to virtually get each other through.
Yeah, we got rid of a couple of people that we didn't want there, a couple of people we thought were responsible for what was happening. But Yeah, it was a strange time in that we were coaching. Like you're dedicated to giving your players the best opportunity to succeed. And so we devised design training. We'd watch our edits. I think we kept a very consistent training regime and got our players playing a level that was the highest in my time and beating some really good teams. But at the end of each session, it was almost like all your energy just drained out of you because you'd been up since 6 a.m. trying to deal with the media. You're fighting through the media throng. You get the session. You get yourself up for the players. And then you finish training. You sit in the coach's room. And, Bomber had come in or Danny had come in. But I remember Bomber and I, most of the time, just looking at each other going, how are you, mate? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Are you really? No, not really. And you talk through what was going on. And that energy from him, from Danny, from Simon Goodman, from Sean Wellman, was really important to each of us. But you'd be talking to Bomber, and then someone would come and say, Bomber, you need to come and interview the ASADA, or you need to come and talk to this person about that. So it was quite a difficult time to get any continuity in training. But having some friends and colleagues who are going through the same sort of thing definitely enabled you to bounce off each other. And I'm not sure, well, firstly about my wife, but also without some of the people at the club you could go and talk through similar issues with, how we would have got through all that.
So you have to counsel each other. So, and obviously, you're not. That's not your specialty.
No.
So how do you deal with that? How do you digest all that?
Well, you just talk. And it sounds strange, but I felt like I was on the phone more then than ever before in my life because you'd have to counsel players. So you finish training. Let's say you do a morning session. Players have a couple of hours off, do their weights, do all their edits, do everything. Players leave 4 or 5 o'clock. But then you'd field calls from players. Are we going to get off? What's going on? And so you deal with that till maybe 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Player to fight with his wife, or he'd come around, or there's just a lot of those issues where you're really trying to console your players who are the most important. But then you try and console your other coaches, or then you'd need someone to talk to yourself. And so I had a couple of friends outside who you might be on the phone till midnight with talking because you're trying to decompress some of this stuff. And Tanya and I would sit and talk about a lot, but then there'd be a point and you just go, I just can't talk about this anymore. I have to stop talking about it because if I keep talking about it, I'm going to self-combust. But I think that's what comes with pressure, right? The pressure in a crisis like we had is if you could deal with the crisis rationally on every level and you could go through every point and rationally deal with it, you'd handle the crisis so much better. But you overlay a heap of pressure. You're going to lose your job. You're going to be thrown out of the profession. Your identity's totally worked up in this whole side of things. What are you going to do? How are you going to make money from going forward? How are you going to pay for things? You got your home loan. You throw all that into a crisis and you make pretty poor decisions. And looking back on it all, I often wonder what decisions we would have made, or I would have made and the club would have made, if you take away the ramifications of getting those decisions wrong and the pressure. And I think they would have been a little bit different. So
you're out of the loop now and you're back into some kind of normality with your life at home, but then you hit a massive wall. You actually end up in hospital, don't you?
Yeah, so I finished at Essendon in August 2015 and really went into a really bad spiral. Couldn't handle the fact. First, I brought this pressure and this, shame onto my family. There was shame onto my family. Second was that 34 players had got, found guilty of taking drugs, which I still don't believe they did, but those 34 players' lives have been destroyed. They're going to lose their football careers. The club that I loved and always wanted to be successful with, I'd bought them as a leader. That's where they were. And that our fans had, lost this thing lost Essendon to a certain extent. So that shame was pretty poor, was extremely bad. And I just did some dumb things, went missing for a while, took off overseas, really made some bad decisions around my life.
But you felt like you needed to run away from it and just
absolutely.
Forget it for a while,
Absolutely.
If that was possible?
I just had to get it out of my head. I had to just run away from what was going on. I couldn't deal with here in Australia. I couldn't deal with the reality of what would happen, what had happened. So came to the point, this is the end of 2015. I'm sitting down at Sandringham, the walk down at Sandringham, in the car park, sitting in the car. And I used to love just driving down there and go for a run or a walk and just decompressing. Have done for a long time. And sitting in the car, and we had some shocking thoughts about what was next.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I remember Beyond Blue was the number that the club, that the AFL had always talked about, and I think Jeff Kennett was quite passionate. It was in my head. So I put it on my phone, Beyond Blue, and a number came up, pressed the number. Within 30 seconds, a guy was on the other end of the phone. I still don't know who the guy is. And I just started talking to him. I said, mate, this is how I feel. In a very intimate, honest way. I feel like I can't go on. I can't live my life. I've brought shame to my family, shame to my football club, profession, lost my identity. And he just started talking to me and said, well, where do you live? And I said, I live about 15 minutes, 20 minutes from here. So do you think you can drive yourself home? I'll talk to you, but just drive home. So this is an hour I was talking to him. Started the car and just drove home, and all the way I was talking to him. By the time I got home, there's a special unit from the Alfred Hospital were waiting outside my front door. He didn't know my name. It wasn't about me, the football. He didn't know who I was, anything. I told him my address. The care unit from the Alfred Hospital was waiting outside the front door. So I went in the front door with these two nurses and a psychologist, and walked in the front door, and Tanya greeted me, in the room. She goes, "What's going on?" Sat down and said, "This is how I feel." Asked her not to be there for this conversation. Just talked to these nurses for a while. Anyway, that went on, and they were really helpful. It's the end of 2015. But then I ran again, and ended up overseas quite a long time, and turned up back in. Came back intermittently, but end of 2016, which is a year and a half after I sort of finished the job at Essendon, and what was it, probably 3 years after it all happened, when I was lying in bed one night, kids and Tanya were downstairs, it had just got all too much for me. Swallowed a heap of sleeping tablets, and next thing I knew, I was waking up in the Cabrini Hospital with my wife sitting next to me, basically saying you've got two choices. One of them is you can disagree with me, and I'll compulsorily commit you into the Alfred Hospital as an inpatient with with all the psychologically unwell people, or you can come with us and we'll check you into the Alfred Road Clinic, and you can spend as much time as you need getting better. So I chose the second option, and went under some pretty deep psychological help for about 6 weeks, and great support from my wife and all my extended family. That was, what was that? Got out of there about the start of February 2017, and I spent the last sort of 3 to 4 years trying to rebuild my life, and from the inside out, not necessarily from the goal results driven world that we were all part of, but more from the inside out. And it took me a while to realise that was the way to rebuild. It was not about achieving this and that, but was actually becoming happy with myself again, becoming not content with what had happened, understand that what had happened was terrible and bad from a number of different sides, that I'd made severe mistakes, that people had done things to me that maybe I deserved and maybe I didn't. Some I did, some I didn't. That I'd hurt a lot of people, but come to the conclusion that, okay, I'm going to put that in a box and I'm going to move forward. And what are we, 2020, and feel amazing. So it's been a significant, 47? This started at 40. So it's been a 7-year journey to come out to the point that I'm happy to talk about it with you, but also happy that I feel as good as I ever have in my life. So 7 years is a long time, and I think back to times in 2016, times in 2015 when I feel like I'm at the bottom of a well, right? 30-foot well. It's dark. And every time I try and climb out of that well, another brick just hits you on the head, and people just throwing bricks at your head, or you're throwing them at your own head. To being helpless like that and lying in bed and not being able to move, hearing your kids playing outside but still not being able to move, to where I am now is just, it's light years away. But the sense of happiness and joy you get from understanding how good you feel now to how from where you felt so poorly is a really nice feeling. So, yeah, there's ups and downs in life, and not everything's perfect. And I'm not saying life is absolutely perfect for me. It's you got to work hard. You have some bad days, some good days, but I have a much greater appreciation for how good you can feel after knowing how bad you can feel as well.
And I think that's really important that, even though you're talking about it, it doesn't mean that, hey, my life's perfect and everything's under control. You're going to have moments that you have to really work on things.
Yeah, I mean, life's, this is the biggest cliche, but life is a massive journey. And once you get on that journey and realise you're on that journey, that you're going to have highs, you're going to have lows. And when things don't go well for me, or, you have a fight with your wife or one of your kids, they're the most important things, right? When your relationships with people you care for are tested, or even little things, or when you don't get the job you want, or when things, you're not earning the money that you wanted to earn, or you were earning and you want to earn more, and all these things that you want to go better. For me, it's able to go deep down and go, you know what, it's nowhere near as bad as what it was. And so, yeah, I'm not saying life's never perfect for anybody. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. You're on this journey and it's up and down. And when you realise that, then I think you become a lot happier. And one of the things that when I realised that you got to build from in here, not what the world's giving you, but in here, that was a really important point for me, and became a lot easier to get through the journey.
Now, and I think it's like whatever happened in this conversation was happening naturally, and wherever it was going to go, it was going to go. But I think that's the really important thing, is that you talking about it. It's important for you because you need to communicate. Is that right? You need to actually talk about where you've been, and it's a part of dealing with and getting better.
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable talking to you, obviously. I wouldn't have this conversation with many. This is just between you and I.
Yeah, it is. But it's also, when I mentioned I'd love to have a chat with you, you also said, I think it's really important because the world's a bit crazy at the moment. I think it's really important to actually share my experience because I'd like to help, because there's a lot of people who need some help.
Look, they use this word depression. It's used for a lot of different areas, and it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I can say that I've been in a depressive cycle, which means that I've been right down the bottom. I've thought about some things that I wouldn't want to admit to previously before. I'm ashamed to admit that prior to this episode myself, I probably didn't give depression or mental health, I suppose is the best way, mental health, a really serious thought. I was really quite, people will be all right, just think positively, be fine. But mental wellness, mental health in society is a huge issue. And I think part of my story might be relevant to other people. Everyone has their own different story, and to be able to tell your story, and if people want to listen to it, they can. If they can get something out of it, they can. That's great. I have a story that part of it I'm not, part of it is a very black time caused by some of my own actions. Which is for 10 years ago, I may have been difficult. That's difficult to reconcile, that your own actions lead you down a path where people get hurt. You always want to think you're doing good by people, and always try to do good by people. But my actions hurt a lot of people. So I feel a lot more comfortable myself that I can say, okay, accept that, and then move on and understand that I think I'm probably a better person, whatever that means. Because of that. But one of the things people are getting preached at all the time at the moment. You got to eat well, you got to be fit, you got to do this, you got to do that. It's not an easy thing to do it every day of the week, to live that life. It's okay if you slip off sometimes, and as long as you get back on. And one of the biggest things that was said to me by a psychologist who I worked with a few years ago is she said, it's try and exercise again, try and do things. It's okay. Exercise doesn't have to be a 5K run or an hour gym session. It might just be walking around the block. And then tomorrow it might be 1.5 things around the block. Because what a lot of people do is they catastrophize or think this exercise regime is going to be huge. Just take off little pieces every day in exercise, in diet, in health, in mental well-being. That's the way to start, and you never know where you can end up. And so when I started that 3 years ago, for going for a walk around the block or doing a little bit of mindfulness, it was only a tiny bit, and then you just build and see where you end up.
Yeah, and so you come through all of that. Obviously, you spent time locked away, as you said. Were you allowed to connect with family at all?
Not really. My family, yes. I was locked in a little white room with a nurse, dedicated nurse, and psychologist to come and see me every day. I was allowed to see my wife, my kids, my mother, my wife's parents, and my sisters. That's pretty much it. Their husbands. So I was a group of about 10 people I could see, and they sort of did the rotating thing in and out and making sure that I was okay. But it was a very, very, very lonely time in that white room, and it literally was like, you can imagine being in a psychological ward, and but that time was very, very important for my brain to just calm down, stop. I mentioned it before. It was just going round and round. It's like being on a mouse on a treadmill. That was my brain was doing over and over and over again to stop that cycle, and then able to move forward.
And what about life today? Is it balanced? Yeah, you still got the kids. There's still some craziness. I know that you're doing a bit of training with your son, who's also just joined Essendon. So
that's humbling.
It's pretty nice.
Life's good. I mean, the world's crazy at the moment, as we all know, and we're going into even crazier times, I think. But just get to spend some quality time with your family and your kids. We've got older kids, and to train with. This morning it was out running with the 19-year-old, 16-year-old, and 11-year-old. It's safe to say that I was beaten by all of them, but that's good. You treasure those times early in the morning, running around, having a kick with your kids, and it's playing tennis in the backyard, whatever it is. Life is very good.
And every time I call you or can get onto you, which is very, very hard, it's always at night, and you always. Seems like you're chopping or you're preparing dinner, so you must be a good cook.
I'm not good, but I enjoy it. I actually enjoy cooking.
Is it therapeutic for you?
It's one of those things where it's interesting, but it's a bit mind-numbing, and it's not mind-numbing, but it's not. You're not trying to achieve a business deal, or you're not trying to achieve a sports a record. You're trying to do something that contributes to your family, and for me, it is quite relaxing. Like the William, our 11-year-old. He's learned how to bake bread, so we're baking bread, and Tanya will go and cook biscuits with him. It just this time I really think is an important time for families to connect. But I do enjoy cooking, and I think you'd probably better ask the kids what it tastes like, because some of them are a miss.
Well, I'm just on the other end of the phone. I just hear chopping, and I'm like, he's obviously chopping another carrot. He must love carrots.
See, I can't have a conversation and just have the conversation on the phone. I have to be doing
multitasking.
Well, it's just one other thing,
which is very rare for a male. Hey, we really appreciate you giving us some of your time. I think it's so important for everyone to hear your story, because I think a lot of people in these crazy times are definitely going to get a great deal out of it. So thank you so much for opening up and sharing so much. We wish you all the very best. But not when the Hawks take on the mighty Bombers.
No, thank you, Crawford. And good luck with the AIA side of things. They're doing a great job with AIA Vitality. And I'd shake your hand, but I don't think we're allowed, are we?
No, we're not allowed. But that'll do. Good on you, mate. If you are feeling distressed as a result of anything within this video, visit beyondblue.org.au or call the Beyond Blue support service on 1300 22 4636 or Lifeline on 131114.